Right now, one of the biggest things that everyone is focused on when it comes to Ripple is RLUSD and the competition. More so the big banks launching their own stablecoins. Then you also have Circle with USDC, and then you also have Tether with USDT. And a lot of people think that Ripple can't compete in this market, but this is where everything, in my opinion, really kind of changes, right? Because Ripple offering a stablecoin that is fully transparent, fully compliant, fully regulated, allows them to tap into their growing network already of institutional players and offer them something like a stablecoin to actually interact with and utilize within the digital asset space. Ripple already has so much built out in terms of their infrastructure. The stablecoin is just another piece of that. So when we really think about RLUSD, I do think that it can compete with USDC and even USDT, and I actually think that it could be a lot bigger than these additional giants within the stablecoin market. But the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people I'm starting to see really kind of bring up the idea that RLUSD is not seeing a massive amount of adoption. But they couldn't be any more, wrong about that, considering the fact that when we actually look at RLUSD on RWA.xyz, 420, almost $7 million worth of market cap. This is up about 50, almost 2% in the last 30 days. Holders up about almost 3%, 32,784. And then the monthly transfer volume is up almost 100% at almost $2.8 billion. Now, we know that this is not fully updated. Why do we know? Well, because if we go over to RLUSD right now, there's about $455 million tied to RLUSD instead of 427 million. But I do think that this monthly transfer volume might be inaccurate because we've been hearing talks about some very significant amounts of money moving over some of these networks around RLUSD, which I'll get to here in a second. But I also want to talk a little bit more about some of the top altcoins, right? Because if we are going to see RLUSD really kind of challenge the big players here, $61.7 billion is what USDC holds right now in terms of market cap. When it comes to RLUSD, it's only 455.29 million. Okay, that's a big step in terms of overall adoption, minting of RLUSD, and overall market exposure to things like, for example, institutional DeFi and just DeFi use cases in general. So when we really think about what's going on here around RLUSD, I suspect that this thing is going to wake up in a big, big way. And overall market exposure to things like institutional DeFi protocols and pools. Just the opportunity here for RLUSD from the institutional side, but also even the retail side, is extremely significant. This is where I think that we really kind of start to draw a few differences around RLUSD and USDT and even USDC. But I'll talk about that here in a moment. When we look at the top stablecoins by value, we're seeing a major difference here in terms of value here compared to RLUSD. We have a long way to go to actually even challenge Circle's USDC market cap. But like I said, with all of those big initiatives, institutional grade adoption, institutional DeFi use cases, tokenization, and even payment use cases as well around stablecoins, you got to remember that these stablecoins can grow in a massive way almost overnight. Even if we think about the actual stablecoin market itself, this thing has been taking major step functions to the upside. And this is where we get pretty excited, actually, I should say, about where we are headed, because this is the future of finance. This is how everything does change. And this is also how crypto hits the mainstream. Now, I want to talk about this here in a moment, but first, I want to go over here to this post, which was just in Ripple's RLUSD stablecoin now handling $10 billion in daily volume across its entire ecosystem. Now, I almost thought that this was a fake post. I actually thought that this was just, engagement farming 101 from a whale account like this, because they do have, 509,000 followers. But then I found the source of this, which is coming from Crypto Aries. So now I actually do believe this, and it's actually coming from Reese Merrick, who is one of the key individuals behind Ripple in terms of a Ripple employee focused on stablecoins. And here we have a short clip from my last video. RLUSD stablecoin by Ripple is doing $10 billion in daily volume. Wow. So apparently, when we look at what's actually happening on CoinMarketCap or even over here on rwa.xyz, this is extremely inaccurate. Now, check this video clip out.
But first, let's hear from Reese Merrick, and I have a clip that actually almost nobody has seen. It had under 100 views, and he talks about the numbers, some surprising numbers with the RLUSD. That would be the stablecoin that's going to be used for the cross-border remittances. Have a listen.
I think as the cross-border payment world evolves, I think stablecoins are becoming a key part of that. If you think of the total amount of cross-border payments that are made, 50% of them are actually settled in dollars, and a lot of those payments are settled outside of the US. Therefore, being able to settle payments in a USD-backed stablecoin really, get away from some of the inefficiencies that we see in USD cross-border payment settlements at the moment. We launched RLUSD back in the last year. We've seen that move up to 300 million market cap and daily volume of $10 billion. So we're seeing some good traction there.
So $10 billion in daily volume. Now, I'm sure that a lot of that is actually happening on Ethereum, because we already know, if we go back over here to rwa.xyz, we have the numbers in front of us in terms of that monthly transfer volume, which was about almost $8 billion as of recent. So, where's the 10 billion coming from? We have no idea. This is tracking both Ethereum and XRP. So I guess this is just inaccurate in general. So we can't really base it off of what we're seeing here. Even just going off of RLUSD on CoinMarketCap, we could see that this is kind of more up to date. But the thing about this $10 billion in daily volume, which is just insane, you got to think about it like this, right? That is $10 billion every single day. That is almost $3.7 trillion per year in just a stablecoin. And by the way, XRP and the XRPL are also exposed to this in a big way. This is actually very, very exciting if it is true. Now, again, how true is it? Well, we don't know how much money is actually being moved over Ethereum right now. We don't have every single stat in front of us, but if Reese Merrick is saying this, I do believe that this is actually happening. Now, also, I do think that this is setting the pace for RLUSD to become a top 5 giant, because we've been hearing about, RLUSD becoming a top 5 giant for quite some time. It would take almost $2 billion in market cap. Right now, as it stands, $455 million. So RLUSD actually has a lot of work to do here, and I'm actually very much so looking forward to seeing what RLUSD actually does achieve. Now, on top of this, let's go over here to this video clip over here, which is, Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse expects RLUSD to be one of the top 5 stablecoins by year end, and expects the stablecoin market to grow dramatically. And this goes back to March, and I want to bring this back up because we just saw the case basically get dismissed, right? We already know that this case is basically done with the SEC. We also know that the US market is opening up big for stablecoin initiatives and even US-based crypto projects. So why wouldn't RLUSD also see a massive amount of traction and adoption around it? It only makes sense. But check this out.
If you think about the next forefront of stablecoins, now that the US is getting toward clarity, what's possible?
Well, I think we're underestimating how big that might get. Today that market's about $230 billion. So I think some smart people think that may go up 10x in the next 5 years. I think that's probably right. I mean, the two leading players in Tether as well as USDC are both, I think, poised to do well in that market. Ripple launched our own stablecoin at the end of last year. That's already ahead of our own internal forecasts in terms of where we are at this point in the year. Still, we're small, but the goal is by the end of the year for RLUSD, Ripple's stablecoin, to be one of the top 5 in the market by the end of the year. And I think the whole market's going to grow dramatically over this year.
So what does it take you to get there? Who are you pairing up with? Are you creating some financial partnerships in order to make RLUSD more of a household name?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even today we had more listings go live for RLUSD on some global crypto exchanges. Anytime you do something new, it takes a minute for that kind of, if the pun of the ripple effect of seeing how that plays out. And so we're seeing that happen in real time. So I'm really pleased. And again, as I said, we're ahead of our Q1 forecasts of where we expect it to be. So we feel really good about that progress.
Now, the big question is, where does RLUSD stand next to USDT and even USDC? Well, big shout to Smoke Dog, because we have just in a new report from Anchorage Digital ranks RLUSD as having stronger regulatory oversight and superior reserve management compared to both USDT and USDC. See for yourself. Here we actually have over here the full report, Stablecoin Safety Matrix, snapshot for institutions to reduce risk. And then over here, safety around stablecoins. The matrix draws exclusively from public disclosures and third-party documentation and reflects a point-in-time look at the stablecoin landscape as of June of this year. This matrix is not intended to serve as a recommendation. It is a factual summary of observable regulatory and structural characteristics that may influence how institutions assess risk, compliance readiness, and operational fit. And then also over here, we have the stablecoin safety matrix, where PYUSD and USDP is at number 5, RLUSD is at number 4, USDT and USDG is at number 3.5, AUSD is at about roughly 2.5, then at 2, FDUSD and USDC. This is very, very interesting. And number 4, US state or other prudential regulator strong record. This is under regulatory oversight again. And then reserve management, mainly HQLAs, bank credit risk attenuated by GSIBs, or significant equity buffers. Then also over here we have stablecoin safety matrix again, regulated by the New York Department of Financial Services. And then we also have again the same thing that I just mentioned before. USDC is number 2, USDT is number 2.5. Again, this is showing you the regulatory side of the market for RLUSD and exactly how far ahead RLUSD is compared to the competition. Then also over here, we have stablecoins such as USDP, PYUSD, and RLUSD, and USDG reflect stronger institutional alignment, each operating under formal regulatory regimes and backed by reserves composed primarily of high-quality liquid assets with mechanisms like insurance or equity buffers to absorb losses. In contrast, AUSD, FDUSD, USDC, and USD0 exhibit greater structural risk. Then also regulatory clarity is beginning to solidify through frameworks like the Genius Act, and with it, compliance expectations are likely to increase. This is where we start to see all of those big banks that were already tapped in with Ripple for years and years and years, now looking into what Ripple is doing with the stablecoin, and all of a sudden they want to tap in. They want to utilize the stablecoin in a huge way over, of course, the XRP ledger. Now, also on top of that, we have over here RLUSD will rival Tether's USDT and Circle's USDC. Ripple began testing the stablecoin in August and has been lining up exchanges to support RLUSD. Heavy competition. So we already know that the market is heavily, concentrated in the Tether USD side of the market with a massive amount of size and liquidity tied to it. But we also have competing altcoins. Now on the bottom, you can't see it, but we have, as the market heats up and investors potentially move more value incentives, RLUSD's chances might revolve around offering attractive returns to its users. And this combined with even this, which is, however, USDC does not differ in one crucial aspect from RLUSD, in that Circle does not offer its own blockchain. And that's a huge plus one, especially with all of the work being done on the actual ledger. I do think that we're going to see XRP level up in a huge way this year. Also, by being able to offer both the rails, its XRP ledger blockchain, and the token that can move alongside those rails, RLUSD, for cross-border payments and companies, Ripple is positioned to be able to provide a complete solution rather than needing to partner with other providers such as Ripple's partnership to support MoneyGram. So yeah, listen, when we think about Circle, mainly P2P, if we really think about it. But outside of that, right, like the overall view here for XRPL and even RLUSD is that XRPL will be the bridge between RLUSD and other stablecoins, and this will be all done on the XRP ledger itself, and we'll have institutional grade liquidity pools, we'll have institutional grade payment use cases, and even retail use cases. The future here is extremely bright, especially if these networks have very, very liquid stablecoins. And also on top of that, don't forget that USDC is coming to the XRP ledger. It's actually now live on the XRP ledger. So no matter what, when it comes to Ripple or even Circle, we know these are very two successful projects and companies in this space. No matter what happens with, competition wise, I still think that we are going to see some very big upgrades and updates happening around the XRP ledger to accommodate for even more stablecoins, which will expand the offering, which will allow us to not really worry about who is competing with Ripple with RLUSD, because we already have so many great stablecoins on the actual network. And at the end of the day, when it comes to stablecoins, we already know that this is going to be a multi-currency, multi-chain future. But those underlying networks like the XRP ledger and projects like XRP itself are going to see a huge inflow because of all of the institutional grade connections back to XRP and the XRPL through Ripple, which this is something that I'm actually very bullish on now that we have the lawsuit kind of put behind us, on top of course, overall adoption really kind of growing in a big way. So definitely stay tuned for that. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.